No, it is the reflection of something pink. I was like, oh, have I got lipstick smeared down me? Sorry, the real professional start to a sew-along. Hello, hello, hello. I think I've come on here a little bit early, so I will wait until a few more of you are here before we get chatting about anything more serious than the general waffle. Okay, I think I've got everything I need, but no doubt we'll find out. Let me see if I can just lower it down so you can see a little bit more of the table. Does that chop my head off? No, it doesn't, that's fine. Hello, Vanessa, I'm good, thanks. Oh, Rosie is online, guys, ready to answer your questions. Happy Monday indeed. Another week. Can't believe it's just flying as it is. It's going very, very quickly this year so far, which is crazy, given that it's Groundhog Day a lot of the time. But anyway, here we are for one of the best parts of the week. The sew-alongs, always look forward to these. They're always a really nice part of our week. Oh, thanks, Helen. Yes, I am wearing my new hacked dress that I finished off last night. I made it yesterday. Yeah, it is basically the bilberry, which is a pattern which we first brought out on Stitch School. So if you're a member of Stitch School, you can get this for free. It'll be whatever your membership for Stitch School is. Sorry, I've just got a WhatsApp message just lingering there on my screen, which is annoying me. And then I took the Georgie skirt and I've put that on it, on the bottom. So I found my natural waist point, added seam allowance, and then added the Georgie skirt, the version 2, I think. I can't remember which version this is, but the gathered skirt. But to be honest, you could just do a very simple ratio of 2 pieces of fabric that are at least 1.5 bigger than your hip, and then gather that in. But yeah, it was really easy to make. The only thing that I would do next time is I'd probably make these a little bit tighter. It's not that much of a kind of, I basically brought the sleeve down into a kind of narrowed it down, but I think I could have narrowed it down a little bit more. Anyway, the fabric as well, we've still got lots of this fabric left, I believe, so I'm sure Rosie will be putting the link up to the fabric. But yeah, I didn't have Georgie, I didn't have Jasmine this weekend, so I got to do a bit of selfish sewing, which was really nice. Right, so we're doing the pipe cushion today, guys, pipe cushion part 2. Now, because we created our piping last time, but I felt like we couldn't just leave it as that, because you can't make a cushion like that. And because this particular sew-along isn't something that we currently have as a pattern and instructions that you can download, but we are working on increasing our beginner kind of projects that you guys can purchase from us. So we're actually very busy at the moment, squirreling away. I'm not squirreling away, that would mean hiding and storing. Working away at making up lots of projects for absolute beginners, because since everything has happened since the pandemic, there are so many more beginners out there wanting to learn to sew, which is wonderful. But we're quite aware that what we have on our site is actually not absolute sewing beginner, it's beginners for dressmakers. So we want to help fill that gap and make sure that there's lots of things on there for absolute beginners, so that they've got projects they can do before they move on to dressmaking. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent, what a surprise. So I was looking at how to do the pipe cushion, just like reminding myself of it. And we have a Dropbox folder with all our instructions and things, so I just usually do a quick search before I kind of, just to check what I'm doing. And sometimes I'll have it up on the laptop, as you know. Anyway, I realised I've got it in my book. This book, when was it written? When did I write this book? This is my second book. I can't even remember now. I think it must have been 2014, or I think I wrote it in 2013. Should actually say, shouldn't it? Why does it not say here anywhere? Maybe it says at the back. But anyway, I wrote it a long time ago. Here we go. It was actually published 2015, so I wrote it in 2014. Anyway, at the back are some really lovely projects for the home. And I've completely forgotten that I put a pipe cushion in there. So anyway, I've got that there as a reference. So I think, I didn't triple check, but I think I said that I was going to make a pipe cushion that was 50 by 50. However, I took my piping out of the cupboard last night, ready for today, and in my cupboard, I have got my craft bits and bobs in there, in my sideboard. This is the Lisa Comfort Home sideboard, if anyone's ever interested. That's my other business. And I've got some Lisa Comfort Home paint on it. How annoying! There's like a tin of paint in there which hasn't leaked, but this was up against the lid, and I'd basically recently used this mint paint, and now I've got it on there. So I've decided to downsize my cushion. It's now going to be 40 centimetres. So I've cut out two pieces that are 42 centimetres by 42 centimetres. So I cut those out and then realised actually, probably because we used a bit of a larger seam allowance on there, it's probably better to put the seam allowance up at 1.5. Because that's what we've got on the edge of our piping cord. So never mind, it will just mean it's a little bit fiddlier for me. So I can't just perfectly line it up. I'm going to have the piping just creeping over the edge. The first thing I need to do is just cut this off before I use the paint side. I do not want to use him. Off you go. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pin the piping onto one of the layers of the cushion. So it doesn't matter which one, because it will be, what's this mean? Irreversible? Yeah. Reversible, not irreversible, reversible. You'll be able to use either side. So what we're going to do, piping is going to sit on the inside. We're going to sort of start in the middle of one of the sides here, so not starting at a corner. It's going to be very tricky to finish that neatly. So we're starting at the inside. So in the middle there, sort of middle section. And then we're just going to pin that all the way round. Now I'm going to have my piping. Oh my gosh, Coco, what are you doing? She literally has just flown in from the, no, don't push the tripod, from the cat flap onto the table. One quick leap to say hello. She suddenly must have thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to miss the Sewalong. I must make an entrance. Anyway, right, so we're navigating around the corner. Now I'm going to go ahead and snip into this corner. We are going to need to snip into these corners a bit more afterwards, but actually, if you snip into it whilst you're coming round this corner, so snipping into the seam allowance, you're going to have a much better, move out the way, a much better corner there for your piping. So you're just cutting into the seam allowance where the piping cord is. Okay. She's now, you can't see her guys, but she's now here, lying on the other piece of the cushion cover. No doubt making it dirty, because it's wet outside and she's got muddy paws. Not useful, Coco, not useful. So yeah, just thinking about your seam allowance then. So obviously if you've got, cut your cushion 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, then that will be much quicker and easier for this. But for me, I'm having to just allow that just to come off the edge a little bit. I think what I'll do before I sew is I'll just trim it down. So you can see it's looking like this. Yeah? Ah. Coco, people are saying hello to you. She says hello back. I reckon she can hear through the French windows. She can hear, well, mind you, I wasn't sewing then, was I? But usually when I start sewing, she hears the hum of the machine and she just comes straight in. Oh dear. But I snipped in the wrong place. I'll just snip it a bit earlier. There we go. So it is all in the pinning for this, guys. You've got to pin it really thoroughly, really well, and so then it will make the next stage so much easier on the sewing machine. I'm going to take this to our new office, I think. Have a nice new cushion for my desk, my chair at my office. I was there this morning sorting out fabrics. Got some more lovely new fabrics coming in this week. So I was going on a Monday in the morning and we sort of have a bit of a fabric catch up, and then and see what's kind of sold over the weekend, if I need to reorder anything, that sort of thing. And I usually do a little video when I'm there, which I think Hannah normally puts up on our Instagram on Tuesdays, just saying these are the fabrics that will either be up right now or coming up. So if you always want to keep an eye on what's happening fabric wise, we obviously put them in our newsletters as well, but you get a sneaky preview over on Instagram when I'm sorting through them on a Monday. So yeah, tune in on Tuesdays for that. She's now got the zip. She thinks that's a fun thing. Coco. Oh, that was a mistake. Don't take it off the table because I'm going to need that. And then Poppy will take it. Let me take that back. Poppy. Oh, Poppy's now jumped off her sofa. She's desperate to get involved too. Poppy, leave her. I couldn't find Poppy's lead this morning. In a mad dash to get out the house. So I basically had some leftover piping cord. So I tied that round her collar. It looked like I'd stolen her or something. Anyway, never mind. She didn't care. And there wasn't exactly anyone out and about, so many people to laugh at the ridiculousness of that. Okay, so we want to make sure these overlap here by 4 centimetres. I thought I had a tape measure with me. I do not. I don't know where that's gone, so I have got that on here. Ruler, so I'm just going to check that. So 4 centimetres, yeah, that's fine. There we go. I'll cut that. So because ideally, if you're absolutely spot on perfect and you know what your length of your piping is going to be, then you can measure that before. But to be honest, I always make it a bit longer and then I trim it down. It means we'll have to unpick a little bit of this. So I'm going to stop. I want to make sure I've got about 8 centimetres or so where it's not stitched in, just to make it easier for when I'm, maybe put that one a bit further up, when I'm joining these two ends. So I'm going to stop sewing there. And I'll start there. So I've got a little bit of a gap there and I've got those overlapping, they're overlapping by 4 centimetres here. Right, now when I made this I had a different sewing machine, I had a piped foot. And we've ordered me a piped foot, but I thought I was being clever and had found a Benina pipe foot that wasn't Benina because it was cheaper, or rather it was quicker to get here on Amazon. And it says that it works with Beninas. Didn't fit. So I'll be using a single arm foot instead, but that's fine. I mean, the pipe foot makes it easier, but it's not essential. If you can change your needle position and you've got a single arm foot, then it can work with that as well. So I'm going to move my needle over to the far right, so I can get in there. Oh, I know what, I was going to trim this off, wasn't I? Let's trim that down a bit, so that will, actually, it's only there, there's only a few points where it's a bit too much. I'll just trim that little bit there. The rest, it's all absolutely even. So I'm just gonna, I'll just have to increase my stitch seam allowance that I'm following. But to be honest, where we're stitching, we're going to be guided by the piping cord for this, so that we're getting really close to the piping cord. Obviously keep an eye to make sure that you're roughly on the same point. But for me, yeah, I'm just over, so the 1 centimetre was what I had allowed for. And if I peel back my piping, I'm lining up on that 1 centimetre. But obviously I don't want to have to keep peeling back my piping bias to see where that is. So actually, when that's flat down, it's actually the groove after the 1 centimetre, the 10 marker. So if I can just check that that's roughly on that position all along. Coco, no one can see what I'm doing if you're there. Thank you. Right, stitch length. I'm going to slightly increase that because I don't like the standard on this machine. And then do a little reverse. I've got my pins facing upwards, parallel to the piping, so that it makes it easier to take them out as we go. And then we're coming around here. So actually with this, you might find that you want to pivot a little bit, but I find, yeah, you need to be careful when you're pivoting around your corners, because you've got the piping there. It's more of a kind of curve rather than a sharp pivot point of an angle like you would have if you didn't have piping cord there. So it does give it a sort of rounded corner rather than a sharp corner. Okay. So this is actually going to get stitched again when we put the top layer on. It will get sandwiched again, but essentially you could machine tack this in place, but it doesn't really matter because it's not likely that you're going to take that machine tacking out of the way, because it's all going to be still on the inside. And not visible, and that's just an extra layer of strength, especially at the weak points where you've got to clip into the seam allowance to get around that corner and allow it to sit flat. And we'll be clipping into that a little bit more afterwards. So I think that's still a good idea to have another bit of strength there, proper stitching. And the fabric that I'm using, guys, for this is the monochrome spots, which is one of the Lisa Comfort Home fabrics. So it's a canvas weight. It's a really lovely weight for soft furnishing fabrics. I love this fabric. It's like a twill, a canvas twill. Ooh, am I going to get around there without? No, I think I need to do a bit of a pivot. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to get around there, I'm not going to need to pivot, but that was not going to happen. I did still need to. Oopla. So I'm on my, coming up to my final corner here. Okay, pivoting round, and then we need to make sure that I stop where I've got my horizontal pin, so I leave enough room to play with to get this little overlap sorted. Oh my gosh, guys, this is the cutest thing. Oh my gosh, I have to show you this. Sorry, I've just spotted where she is. Can I show you this? Look. Can you see? Excuse all the mess there. She's in the basket. Where? There. Bless her. Is that comfy, Coco? Oh my goodness. I hope she stays there so I can get a photo of her afterwards. Oh, Sorry, I couldn't help but show you that. It was too cute. Funny cats, eh? Right, back to sewing. Back to sewing we go. Right. Just suddenly thought, I can't see her. Where's she gone? Ah! Bless her. I wonder if she's been sleeping there at night time and I didn't know. It's a bit random place to sit. Right, okay, right, there we go. We're stopping there. And we are going to sort out this. So I do need to get an unpicker. Let's see if I've got my unpicker in here. I really need to have a sort out. Because quite frankly, this is a big old mess. I've got the lid of the unpicker. Can I find the actual unpicker? I mean, Lisa. This is because I sort of finish the sew along and I just chuck everything in here. And then I'll like chuck another load of stuff in here. Oh, throughout the week. And then it gets unbearable. Right, okay. So what we need to do is we need to unpick around probably 4 centimetres of where our piping was. So just unpick so you can release, you can open up the bias strip and release the piping cord. Like that, okay? I'm just going to do the same on this side. I hope she's still there. I want to take a photo. Stay there. Go, go. She looks like she's proper going to sleep there. Right, okay, stay focused, Lisa. So, I've taken those bits out. Now what we have to do now is we've got to turn these. So you move the piping cord out the way and then you turn these now so that they're going to get stitched like that. So you're going to take them right sides together and put them overlap like that. But we need to make sure that we're stitching it at the right position. So what I'm just going to do is put a pin in just to see. So we need to make sure that we're stitching it and they're not going to end up that this, you know, it's too baggy. Yep, I think that's fine. They should be overlapping evenly. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So what I've done here is I have pinned, it's hard for you to see, sorry guys, I pinned from there, so I overlapped them like that, so they're right sides together, so the ends were going like that. Then I'm pinning, get that out of the way, from the across, so from the corner of that side to the corner here, so corner to corner. Now what you could do is draw yourself a nice stitch line, or you can create that stitch line with the pins, it's completely up to you. But you need to be stitching that. I think maybe, I've got a pencil, yeah. I might just mark it so that I can show you afterwards. But I mark it with a Frixion pen. And at least it will show up a bit, because otherwise when I show it to you to the camera you're not going to be able to see it. That was not the straightest of stitching. There we go. So I'll be able to show you that once the pins are out. But now I'm just going to run. I'm not going to bother changing my foot back over, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to run my stitching along that line. So nice straight stitch. It's important that you do a really good reverse. Keep those piping cord pieces out the way. And if you've got any lines that are a little bit clearly aren't straight because you were marking it where the pins are sort of creating a bit of a bump, and just go past those. Okay. So I've literally stitched across there like that. Okay. Then we need to trim this down. So we're going to cut off those triangle pieces, and ideally you're going to get, so we cut off those triangle pieces, and ideally we're going to press that open there. And I'm just going to quickly do it down here. So with the iron, I'm just going to press that seam open. So it looks like that. Okay. Then we will need to tuck these and put these little things back in, the cords back in. But if you overlap them, and the tricking here, again, it's going to be hard for me to show you this, but you overlap them, and then at the middle point where they're both overlapping, you cut into both of them. Okay? Cut into both. If I lift it up, it might go wrong. So overlap them. And hold them together, and then cut into the two of them. And what that does is it means that they will now meet perfectly like that. Then you can wrap your piping join back over, and then we can close that up by stitching that piping in place. Okay, so let's just stitch that in place. So I'm going to overlap where I had been sewing. Okay, now it is a bit bulky where this seam allowance is, but we have pressed that open, so that should help keep it as flat as possible. Once you run your seam over that, it will also help it sit better. Okay. Do you see that? So now we've got a perfectly seamless join. So obviously you are going to have a very small seam there. I need to have sewn a little bit more there. I didn't sew enough there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that because it'll get stitched in when I do the other layer. But all there is there is that tiny little seam, and you wouldn't be able to see where the join in the piping is anywhere. I think that's pretty nifty actually. And I'm going to use, actually I think because of that, I'm worried. I was going to say I'd use that for my, where I put my zip, so that's at the bottom. But I'm not going to do that with this because I'm just worried if I put a concealed zip over, you know, if you're opening the zip over a bulk, over a seam, that can sometimes break the zip. So I won't use that. But if you're not using as heavy a fabric for your piping as I am, so if you're using a lighter weight cotton, then that would be absolutely fine to just put your zip then on that seam, because then you can just use that as the bottom of your cushion. But it is literally like so slight, that seam. I really don't think it's going to bug me wherever it sits on the cushion. So I'm now going to use a concealed zip to finish the cushion so that so we can get it in and out of the cushion. And I'm just thinking about this. We need to put it in there. So I don't want to have, ideally, start your sentence again, Lisa. Ideally, I don't want the zip to be, it's better to buy a zip that is bigger, but if you're making a big cushion, then that could be harder. But I'm only going to have the opening for the zip within the kind of corners. I don't want to be faffing around with a zip in the corners here. So I'm going to measure, again using a tape measure would have been easier, but I'd say 5 centimetres from the corner. pinning horizontally at that point. That's ideally where we're going to want to be starting and finishing our zip. So I just move that down actually, and then I can keep the top of my teeth, which would be neater. Just mark that on the fabric. So 5 centimetres from that corner. Let's mark 5 centimetres from the other corner with the zip as well. So I've now got 2 nice marker points on my seam allowance to mark those 5 centimetres. I'm going to put the tape, so that edge there is going down, so edge of the tape is going down on the edge of the seam allowance. Okay, and so the teeth are facing the piping side of the here, so the teeth are close to the piping, and the edge of the zip tape is in line with the edge of the seam allowance. Then where's our next 5 centimetre marker? There. So that needs to be moved. I'm going to show you up close, guys, afterwards. Sorry, it's a bit tricky me trying to get this accurately done and then holding it up close whilst I'm doing it as well. But if I put these marker pins in, it's a lot easier for you to see. So you're then placing your pin, your zip is right sides facing down already. So we're just going to pin along there, so pinning through all the layers. Okay, so can you see I've got a pin here and a pin there marking, that's where I want to be stitching. So again, I can use the same foot. I've got the nice single arm foot. I'm just going to move my needle over to the far right. So you will need either a single arm foot, or you're going to need like a single arm zipper foot, or you're going to need a piping foot to do this. Okay. So just opening out the teeth. Now, again, it would be, some people might say, well, you're going to use a concealed zip foot for this, but I'm not, because there's a lot going on here with the piping as well. So again, single arm foot's much better because it works with the piping and the concealed foot. But it does mean I'm going to have to open out the teeth of that concealed foot a bit. You can, you know, some people like to iron their concealed zippers before they work with them. You could do that. So I'm doing a nice reverse at the start, and now I'm just running along and I'm stitching in the groove at the base of the teeth, and that in turn is stitching nice and close to the piping. Okay, ouch. So just stop there, do a little reverse. So that now side of the zip is in, it's on there. So the next thing we need to do is get our piece that's much more easier to work with because it doesn't have any piping on it, and we need to stitch the other side of the zip to that. Let's just trim all our threads off before we do that, because it's going to be fiddly. The first thing we need to do is mark those 5 centimetre points on this side as well. So on the other piece of the cushion, 5 centimetres, so that's 2 inches, guys, if you're working in imperial. So those 2 are my marker points there. To make sure that I'm lining it up with the same point of the zip, just fiddle that round. I'm going to close the zip, and where it's hitting those 5 centimetre marker points on the stitch side, I'm just going to snip onto the side that I'm about to use stitch in. So I'm going to snip so it's level. So what I'm making sure, this is the same technique that we do when we're lining up a waist seam in a garment. So if you've got a zip, you've sewn it down one side and there's a waist seam, then you want to make sure that when you put the other side in, that your waist seams are going to join. So you close your zip and you put a snip into the unstitched side of the zip, level with where it was hitting that seam or that marker point on the stitched part of the zip. So then I can take that little snip and I can line that up with the 5 centimetre marker that I've put on this side of the cushion. So make sure you don't twist your zip. I'm going to have to move it in a little bit because at the moment it's not going to be sitting quite on the edge, because if you on this one we don't have the piping, so it potentially could sit a little bit closer to the edge because you've not got as much in the way. So I'm just going to slightly move it in, sorry, so that it's not completely flush there. But basically it needs to be at the same position of whatever it is on the other side. Yeah, it's slightly in on that side too. Slightly. Okay, so it's going right side down. So right side of zip is going right side to fabric. I'm coming close to my other 5 centimetre marker now on this side. So that needs to make sure, and that is sitting where my 5 centimetre marker is. The notch in my zip that I snipped is on top of the marker, the 5 centimetre marker. I'm just going to mark it through to the right side because at the moment it's quite hard to see, so it's white and white. And there we go. So now, moving the needle across the other side for this one, using the same foot. If you wanted to, you could go and put your concealed zip foot on, but I'm just going to keep it with this because I can do it with this. Open out, roll out your teeth so that you're sewing in the groove there of the teeth. Oh, damn, she's got out the cushion of the basket. I want you to go back in the basket, Coco. And then we're going to reverse. Make sure that's a nice secure start. And then we'll carry on. Now, if this was a garment, I would have machine tacked this zip in place first. Because I'm working with quite easy fabric and it's a nice straight seam and there's nothing it's just a small piece, I can deal with just stitching that accurately without having that machine basting in and it just being pinned. But if you want to, by all means do a machine tack first through the middle of the tape and then go back and do your stitching nice and close. Getting all of a full Cocos. Right, so we now have the zip attached. I'm going to slightly close it, but not too much, because we're going to need to have the zip open to turn everything through. So I'm just going to close it a little bit, so that allows me just to line up that corner a bit more easily. Okay, and then I'm not going to cut this yet. Now what we're going to do is pin the rest of the cushion together. So this is the final stage. I'm going to pin all that top layer all the way around. Let's think, actually I want to come down this way, so I'm going to think about how my pins are going to be so that they're facing the right direction. Okay, so the pins are going up. And actually that's not, why is that not aligning? Oh yeah, dope, it's moved. I need some of those Wonder clips actually, they would be better for this because there's a lot of thick layers of fabric with this canvas. Becca recommended them to Rosie and I recently, and they are wonderful. I've never used them before. They're like mini bulldog clips for sewing. Great. And you've got lots of thick layers. They wouldn't be any good on working with something like a jersey, like the dress that I'm wearing, but for something that's lots of thick layers, they're great. Or if you're working with leather and you don't want to leave any marks from a pin. I seem to have 2 pin dishes here. All the pin dishes. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing fine. We're going to finish it. That's great. Okay. So I'm remembering here that I've got some of the binding just sneaking out a little bit. So I need to make sure that I'm not actually lining up my cushion front with the binding. I'm flipping it just to see that it's roughly sitting in the same position as the cushion piece on the back. And that's just because my binding seam allowance was a bit bigger than the seam allowance that was sewing this with. Okay. So again, like before, it's worth us doing all of this pinning. Makes everything easier. Okay, so we need to make sure that the tail here is going to be out of the way, the tail of the zip. I think actually I'm just going to have to think about this. Am I going to have to? No, it's fine, I don't need to trim it quite yet. And we're going to get to a point where the slider on the zip is, no, it should be fine. That's not going to be that. I can just close it a little bit more so that it's not in the way. So these little corners, remember, they're not stitched, so we've only gone to the zip sort of up to there. So you need to come around these corners of this zipped edge and sew those as well. So I'm going to start at this one and I'll finish at that one. You'll just have to move the zip out the way on the other side. Okay, so single arm foot again. Getting as close to the piping as I can so that I'm nice and neat. And we're just doing the same thing really that we did when we were stitching the piping onto the other side of the cushion. Following around the corners, pivoting if we need to. We need to clip into everything actually. We didn't do that. We'll clip into everything afterwards, so we can get a nice corner, and just using the hand wheel just to come round these corners so that I don't end up moving too far away from the piping. I want to keep that really close as I did before. So I'm also using my fingers to keep everything in its position once I've taken the pin out. So I'm taking a pin out and then I'm really pushing down, holding it in place. I'm not letting anything go. Coming round this corner now. Take my pins out. finished actually. Gosh, did I just do that corner without any pivoting? I think I did. Oh, I hope it's okay. I think it's fine. Does anyone else do that when you're sewing? You just go into this autopilot mode. And this will be true of anyone who's been sewing quite a lot, an experienced sewer. Beginners, you won't be feeling this at the beginning. But you just sort of zone out when you're machine sewing a straight seam. And then, especially when it's nothing, you know, it's sort of something like a cushion or something like this, it's sort of the perfect thing for me, just to zone out. And then I suddenly think, did I just do what I meant to do? Okay, this corner is not going to allow me to. Definitely going to have to do some pivoting. Get around there. Last big long seam, and then we're just going to go around that last corner and join up with the zip. And then that's all the sewing done. Okay, last little bit. Round this final corner. Let's do a bit of pivoting to get myself round there. Moving that zip tail out the way. You do not want him to get in the way. Overlapping. There we go. So I'm just going to cut this off now before we turn everything through. And I'm going to just stitch across the end of the zip, which should be all right, but I don't think I've put a jeans needle in here. So sometimes it doesn't, the machine doesn't quite like it, but if you want to be super neat, you can also stitch a little tab over the end of that, but since it's sitting on the kit inside a cushion, that's not going to really bother me. So now I'm just going to make sure that where the corners are, I'm cutting off the extra cushion, so we don't want all of that, and I'm just going to snip into the corner where the binding is, just to release that, just to allow for a nice corner. So obviously we snipped directly where the corner was we were sewing it, but then if we just take a little bit more off, it will help that sit a little bit better. So just cutting the corners off of the cushion and then snipping into the bias tape to allow that to sit flat. Don't. It's dangerous. I think that one's fine. Okay, drum roll. Dum da da dum da dum da da dum da da da. Drum roll, Coco. No. There we go. There is the piping, looking lovely. There we go. Push those piping corners out so are looking nice. Oh, thanks, Diane. This is a Lisa Comfort Home fabric. I'm sure there's a link gone up, but if it hasn't, there'll be another link. So there is our seam join, guys, which you can't see. And I keep going round and round, but it's absolutely fine. Now, Rosie very kindly let me have her cushion insert from the office today, from her chair, so that I could put a cushion in for you. So let's put this in. stand up for things like this. Much easier. So it's already been a bit sat on this cushion. To be honest, for a cushion that's going to go on a chair, that's actually nice. You don't want it to be too poofy. You're only going to flatten it anyway. And that is the concealed zip there. Barely can see that, guys, can you? Ta-da! A piped cushion, guys. We did it. So if you were watching this and you're like, how's she done the piping? There is another video on how I did the first part of this cushion. So we've completed it all in a Sewalong, which is unusual, isn't it? Because we don't normally get all of it done. But I wanted to be able to do all of it with you so you can actually have a go at making one of those yourselves. So guys, thanks for joining me today. Thanks to Rosie for answering your questions. We are back next week with 2. Rosie, what days are we doing them? Is it Monday and Wednesday? Can't remember. But we've got 2 sew-alongs next week because it is the secret pattern. Those of you in the VIP club will know what I'm talking about. Those of you who aren't will find out on Wednesday. But it's our 2-parter, which we always like to do when our new pattern has come out. So that will be next week. We'll be back on Monday and Wednesday, wonderful, at 1 o'clock to do our newest pattern sew-along. Until then, I'll be on Wednesday doing our big hand sew. If anyone wants to do some nice hand sewing and soothing hand sewing and a little bit of chatting with friends, we'll be doing that on Wednesday at 6:30. And you can get yourself a ticket for £5 in its English paper piecing this week. And then on Thursday, stay tuned on Instagram for my lunchtime sew. If you want even more sewing inspiration, we're literally throwing the sewing inspiration at you guys. Hopefully something will inspire you. Anyway, have lovely weeks. I hopefully see some of you on Wednesday. And if not, I'll see you next week. Bye.